Let's just imagine
and to
for a
understand
moment.
the consequences. Sorry, go ahead, Teresa.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, let's just imagine for a moment emotional literacy as part of our educational platform, and what and how that would change the landscape of every workplace.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, for us to be able to understand.
Speechless.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, my internet connection, it keeps coming up with a note saying it's a little unstable, so I hope I'm not cutting in and out. But there's a piece of, understanding all of what we've just talked about, as well as understanding the consequences of not, leaning into these skills or not exercising these emotional muscles. And the consequence of it can be quite startling once you realize that, okay, I can understand what it is to be empathetic, but if I'm not doing it, here's the consequence. Here's the consequence of me acting in a non-empathetic way with my staff, or, instead of just always, well, this is the way it's been, and this is the way we're going to be doing it going forward forever and a day,
Mm-hmm. It's a really good point. And I think that speaks to when we look at HR and we look at sort of HR's top 3 issues year over year they're trying to resolve. Those issues are related to hiring and keeping your top talent, employee engagement, and flourishing through change. And there's probably no 3 better markers in business bottom line that are so expensive if we don't get them right. Because they influence not just performance, but they influence efficiency, effectiveness, productivity. It influences innovation to decrease waste and improve the bottom line year over year. It influences everything from, if I am 75% engaged in the workplace compared to what is a North American average, about 28%, what is the difference to the bottom line when someone is an additional 50% more engaged in their workplace? It's not just the day in productivity, it's also sick days and wellness days. It's the posts I do on the internet about work. It's the feedback I give or don't give. We sometimes blanket this just under it's toxic work environments. Mm-hmm. But toxic is, I think, misinterpreted as just the abrasive behaviors in the workplace. It's also the silent behaviors in the workplace that are related to like sabotage and discretionary effort. Those things are so expensive to the bottom line and can be resolved with emotional intelligence development.
Absolutely. If you don't love your company and love what you're doing, you're right. You could be at a family function and you're going to be, dissuading people from buying that product that your company makes, or you're going to be talking poorly about your coworkers. And it's going to net into, customers aren't going to love your company either. So you're going to lose customer satisfaction. You're going to lose bottom line revenue. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are huge implications, and I believe that where things get a little bit blurry or fuzzy for people, and maybe this is where we can start to shed some light, is really on the connection between some of those things, bottom line numbers and, turnover and all of that with emotional intelligence. And, Teresa, one of the things that I really appreciate about you, and I love watching your videos for this reason, is that you give some great context to emotional intelligence, but you speak about the large array of skills. And there's this misunderstanding that emotional intelligence is one thing and one skill, when the reality is, and we all use it, Michelle, you use it as well, when you're looking at the EQi model, there are many skills. And so I feel that it would be helpful to shed some light on that. But before we even get there, I never have an opportunity to speak to other emotional intelligence coaches like this. So I'd love to get your thoughts, if you guys are open to sharing, with how you define emotional intelligence.
Yes. Do you want to go first?
Teresa, you go ahead. You go ahead, Teresa.
I like to make the understanding of emotional intelligence as simplistic as possible for people, because it can get bumpy and it can get intertwined. So in a nutshell, how I describe it is, it's your capacity to understand your emotions and the triggers to them so that you can accurately express them when they help the situation. And in helping the situation, it strengthens the relationship of the individual or individuals involved. So then collectively, we achieve things like problem solving, innovation, bottom line results in a much more effective way. And when we do, we feel good about ourselves, which relieves stress or helps us manage stress. It makes us more resilient. And this in turn floats into a higher level of our own knowing. And that results in emotional awareness and expression. And this cycle of the journey of emotional intelligence is what it is in a nutshell. How do you describe it, Michelle?
It's very similar to the way very similar, really down to, it's a set of social and emotional skills that we all possess, all of us do. And it's a way of helping us to better perceive ourselves, to understand ourselves in order to understand others, better communicate better, manage our emotions so that in the case of a leader can be able to, lead ourselves so we can lead others. And just building on some of what you've just talked about in the sense of, the outcomes. Once we have a greater understanding of ourselves, that's where it starts. We have a better understanding of others. We have a better understanding of how to cope with, communicate with, cope with challenges, and get to where we want to get to. Bottom line.
How about you, Jamelle? Yeah.
And and you see what I find is it's always it's always a big nutshell when we talk about emotional intelligence in a nutshell, because there's so much to it. It's really not just one thing. And so, it's always challenging for me to break it down or to try to say exactly what it is. As a jumping board, as a springboard, I normally just say that it's about being smart about emotions, your emotions and the emotions of others. And, I just start there, right? And well, what does that mean? This is where we start to bridge into the multifaceted diamond that emotional intelligence really is, because there isn't anything that happens between people that is not related in some way, shape, or form to emotional intelligence.
It's where it all starts.
It's inseparable. So you can't really separate the two. So when you take a bit of a step further and you say, okay, so it's your ability to be able to manage emotions in a smart way. Well, then you can say, okay, what does it look like when you manage emotions in a not so smart way? I think that we can all answer that pretty quickly, yes. Right? Like it's being overly stressed, it's being overly reactive, it's being, passive aggressive, it's being, so nervous that you can't communicate properly, it's saying things that you don't mean, right? So then on the flip side, what does it mean to manage your emotions in a smart way? Well, it's dealing with stress effectively, it's being able to communicate even when emotions are in the way, it's being able to perceive the emotions of other people and communicate based on how they're feeling so that your message is well received. And the list goes on and on and on, right? And so all of us here, we use EQi-2.0. And, there are 15 different emotional intelligence skills. Can you keep that up for a second? Yeah. There we go, right? And if we just simplify the 15 skills, we just look at the 5 categories. There's self-perception, which is self-awareness, self-expression, interpersonal, decision-making, and stress management. Even just looking at those 5 pieces, how many things, especially given the environment they're in right now, can we describe?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you,
It's
Teresa.
huge. Yeah, it's huge. And it can be overwhelming. I've found in the past, you know, when you sort of talk about all the 5 composites and the 15 competencies within, it can be a little overwhelming for folks. So, you know, to kind of put it in their speak or in their house, you know, what's working, what's not working is, you know, I find a good question to start with, because then we get to identify, you know, as Dr. Phil would say, well, how's that working for you? Like if you're doing some things this way, and these are how you're displaying your understanding your emotions, or this is the outcome of what, you know, how you're being with your staff, then is that where you want to be? You know, where is it, where are you stuck? Like, where is the place that you see there needs to be improvement? And then we can, you know, we delve a little bit deeper into, well, what composite does that fit into? And, you know, you can get into that a little deeper then, once you identify what do you think is working and what is not working for you.
I'd love to actually get your thoughts on that, because you mentioned the competencies there. What competencies or skills do you guys find are most relevant based on what people are experiencing right now in the pandemic?
For me, big time, empathy is lacking. That, you know, that's something that needs to be leaned into more or exercised more. Emotional expression is another. Self-awareness, I should preface this by saying self-awareness is really the foundational. So, but the other big 3 for me are, that I've seen in work that I've done recently, is emotional expression, empathy, and assertiveness. Those are kind of the driving main competencies that the others, you know, seem to fall out of.
The requests I've been getting most now are around stress management, resiliency, and then how do I lead people remotely, which has not, well, it has stuff to do